I'm realizing not everyone sees it the same. I have about $100,000 in debt between me and my wife. The way Uber Jeep sees it doesn't make it right or wrong. Every time they make like a change that makes me feel gross, but without having the number to interpret differently, I just imagine them sitting in a boardroom. That is not what I do. That is what you do. We can make this small change that will have a big impact on how drivers perceive how much money they're making. It was easy to see something in a way that made sense, and they made it harder to get to that information. They intentionally made the decision to make it harder. For some markets, this might have been normal. It shows you your booked mileage, and then it shows you your booked time. This wasn't always the case for me. This started last week. The only way for me to see online time is if I go to the website and go to my summary page. Otherwise, they'll only show you your book time, which is misleading. They're making drivers have to take an extra step in order to figure out how many hours they work. And the part that really upsets me, right? We can go back and look at last week. I worked more than 24 hours that week, and then it starts breaking it down into days. In order for a driver to figure out their hourly rate on their phone, right? You'd either have to go to the website to see your actual online time, but then on top of that, you have to convert days into hours before you do the math to figure out what your hourly rate is. And it says, so I noticed that the day I drive, I get the online hours, then later it turns to booked. That is correct. The day you're driving, or the week of, right? It shows you your online time. So that hasn't changed. I didn't notice it until I went to weekly breakdown. And I know some people were leaving comments saying if I just go to weekly breakdown, it'll show me. Not anymore. It's all booked. So for you, you still might be seeing online, but for me, I'm seeing booked. GoGig says online time versus book time does nothing for my taxes. It's only for the timer. That is a good point. That is a good point. You know, in the past, I've said to certain people, like, you know, what you make per, like, metrics are always fun, but the government taxes you based off how much you make per year. And so, you know, if you want to make $100,000 working 80 hours a week, you do you. I'm not gonna tell you not to. I'm not gonna tell you you should. But the reality is everyone has different goals financially. You know, some people, their goal is to make X amount per hour, X amount per hour, per mile. Tristan's goal is to make, I want to make $100,000 this year. I have about $100,000 in debt between me and my wife, and I want to get that paid off. And if I focus on making $40 an hour, then yeah, sure, I'll make $40 an hour, but I might not make, you know, 100K, because I know I can work the 20 best hours in the week and make over $30, $35. Like, I know I can do that. But the reality is, if I want to achieve a specific financial goal in a specific amount of time, I'm going to have to work some of those terrible hours. And it's just what it is. So everyone has different goals, and you make a good point. Mike B says, I see it as the online time is time doing things I want to do. So say you were online for 12 hours and booked 6. To me, you wasted 6 hours of nothing. 6 hours you could have spent on something else. So I agree with you, Mike. And through this conversation that I'm having with you guys, I'm realizing not everyone sees it the same. The way I see it doesn't make it right or wrong. The way Uber Jeep sees it doesn't make it right or wrong. In fact, when I'm trying to understand Uber Jeep's point, I'm now thinking to myself, maybe I should bring my laptop with me. Maybe I should figure out a way to be more productive during moments where online time isn't great. However, in my market, with the exception of slow season, which was like December, early January, I don't have a bunch of like, in fact, I can pull it up. My book time was 31 hours. My online time was 43. So what is that, like 12 hours? 12-hour difference? That is pretty significant. Yeah, so I'm thinking about it. I still want the online time. Without the online time information, we can't even have this conversation, right? There's nothing for me to refer to determine how I feel about it. So no matter what, I think that online time should always be displayed. Now, you might interpret your online time differently from other people, and that's fine. But without having the number to interpret differently, then we can't even have this conversation. So I still support the ability to see it. And I still think that it's a great way for someone to go back in history and say, okay, this day was busy, and I know this because my book time is closer to my online time. So I'm still for it. I don't think there's anything anyone can say to make me think that online time is useless. But this conversation has opened me to the idea that not everyone sees online time the same. So let me know in the chat. You know, I want to know what you think about online time. Maybe I'll cut this part of the video out and make a specific video And maybe I'll make a poll to see how everyone views online time, because I find it interesting. That didn't come out the way I was hoping. Back to the chat. Uber Jeep AZ says they screw with drivers' minds to make them think, wow, I made 1,300 in 1 day, lol. 1 day is 24 hours, but it almost like one work day. I'm so bothered by it, because it's a small change that has such a big impact, and it can go over people's like eyes. I already feel like people don't pay attention to how much they make per hour. I feel like drivers aren't making the best decisions all the time, like mathematically speaking, and then they went and just made it more difficult, and it bothers me. It bothers me so much. I feel like I shouldn't be this upset, but maybe it's because I worked in corporate America, and I know, like, every time they make like a change that makes me feel gross, I just imagine them sitting in a boardroom and being like, yo, we can make this small change that will have a big impact on how drivers perceive how much money they're making. And then we can blame it on New York City. Like, that's, it bothers me so much. Uber Jeep AZ says, and contractors need to stop saying how many hours I worked. Work is what we get paid for. As contractors, employees get paid to be at work, even if they don't work. I mean, to me, that's semantics. You're correct, but I think everyone understands what it is. I don't disagree that you want to speak things into existence. So yeah, I understand that, but I'm mad on that one. My B says, yes, I miss online time. Uber Jeep AZ says contractors get paid to do work, not just be online. Therefore, being online is misleading to be. I was working because I was online. Not 100% true. I do like that point. That is true. I'm going to say it can be hit or miss. Some contractors can agree to work per hour, but that's not us. So I will say that's not us. Okay, Uber Jeep, Jeff, I'll think about that. You've given me something to think about. I'll let it marinate and see how I feel and come back to it. Uber Jeep continues saying, employee mindset is I'm online, so that means I'm clocked in for work. Contract work is different than employment. Contractors don't clock in, therefore just being online doesn't mean I'm working. Look, I logged into the app, I'm at work, lol. No, we get paid to drive as contractors. Okay, I've decided how I feel. And my feelings on that are, while that can be true, drivers need a good way to see if they are wasting their time or not, right? Some days will give you better online time than other days. And that data is important. Knowing that you can go out on a Friday and have less online time and more active time is useful information compared to going out on a Tuesday and having a bunch of online time, but not a lot of active time. So I'm always a fan of give me more numbers, despite the ideology of what you just said. So yeah, sure. I agree with you that contractors should more associate their income with active time. However, I, as Tristan Thomas, who, I do other things, I have a YouTube channel, I should be spending time with my wife. I need to be able to have enough information to determine that the time I'm spending not at home is valuable. I need to know when and where my online time is most valuable. So I get what you're saying, but it doesn't have to be, they didn't need to take it away. I still don't think they need to take it away. My B says online times give you real numbers. I like I do 3 hours a night. Yeah. You can have both, right? It doesn't have to be an either or. We can look at active time. We can look at online time. I'm down with having both. And that's the way they should have kept it. Uber Jeep AZ says online time gives you the real numbers for what? We all run 2-3 apps at the same time. Even while doing cash rides, I can be on Uber Pet, but doing cash rides. To that, I would say, you should still be tracking how many hours you're spending driving, right? Whether you're doing cash rides, whether you're doing Uber, whether you're doing Lyft. I don't see the harm in tracking more hours. I do see the harm in not doing it at all. I strongly believe more information is better. And I think it's more justified to be upset that they removed it than to be upset with drivers for wanting it. It's like, it's weird. Uber Jeep AZ says online time gives you how long you were logged on the app. That's it. You can be walking the dog while logged into the app. Sure. But I think we're seeing it different because you decline more rides than I do, which is fine. Not a critique. When I'm online, I accept maybe 90% of my rides or better. Just depends on, what's going on. So that information is probably more accurate to me compared to someone who is sitting at home walking their dogs and declining rides left and right. When I'm out there working, I'm working. I'm not walking dogs. I don't bring my laptop and like edit or anything like that. When I'm out my house and I'm driving, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that number is more important to me because when I'm online, I'm online. The only time I'm offline on both apps, Uber and Lyft, is if I'm repositioning myself, to which I track my time because I like to know what my offline time is to be able to have an accurate accounting of my numbers. So I don't think anything is wrong with that. Uber Jeep AZ says, I've fallen asleep with my phone on Uber Pet. Well, I don't understand why you use Uber Pet. Let me finish reading your comment. I've fallen asleep with my phone on Uber Pet, woke up with 9 hours online. Online time means the time you're logged on the app. That's it. Doesn't indicate where you are when logged on. And it doesn't indicate why you are logged on. Were you really trying to drive or just looking for surge or events? That's what we do. That is not what I do. That is what you do. And, or do you just use Uber Pet to like make the Lyft app think you're on Uber so that the Lyft app will send you rides? Chat, I'm not saying that that's how it works, but that's one of the explanations I have. If you have any other reasons to why you use Uber Pet, let us know. I'm curious, super curious. But your comment, I still take my previous stance where I guess because we treat our time differently, we see the value in online time differently. My knee-jerk reaction to this was that they're making it difficult for people to just calculate what their numbers really are. They're trying to obscure how much drivers are really making per hour, which bothers me. However, on Twitter, Sergio pointed out to me that they probably made this change because they're now having to offer minimum pay based off of book time. So for people in New York, I believe it's $19.96 per hour by 2025, but that's for book time. So if you're sitting in your car and you're not moving, you're not going anywhere, you don't make a minimum for that. You make a minimum for the time spent on the way to the passenger and dropping off a passenger. So I believe that because New York City, and there's a couple other places, they're forcing that minimum wage thing. I think Uber and Lyft is using this as an excuse to show book time instead of online time. I don't see why it can't be an option where drivers themselves can say, hey, do you want to see online time or do you want to see book time? And I take issue with it. It's information at a glance is a big deal. Don't take it for granted. If you're able to quickly see how much money you're making to justify if your time out on the road is worth it or not, that's something we should all want. So I'm really disappointed that they have taken that away. And I know I've seen the comments. You can still see if you do XYZ, you can still see if you go down more menus and layers. It's not the point. The point is that it was easy to see something in a way that made sense, and they made it harder to get to that information. They intentionally made the decision to make it harder. And to me, that's problematic. I don't like that. I'm not a fan. I'm big on numbers. And the faster I can calculate something, the better the decision I can make. So there's my rant. There is my rant.